Welcome to the Last Christian Radio Show with your hosts, Brother J.D. Williams and Brother T.L. Farley. It's now time to grab your Bible as prophecy brings into focus the events playing out on the world stage at incredible speed, right before our very eyes, and exactly as was foretold.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of the Last Christian Radio Show. My name is J.D. Williams, and as always, I am joined by my co-host there in the Dallas area, Mr. T.L. Farley. And how are you doing this evening, Terry?
Doing good, Joel. Thank you. The Texas heat.
There you go. Well,
it continues. Yeah. Continues.
Yeah, it's just, I'm afraid it's just started, Terry, unfortunately for us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, now we got a lot to cover today, and I'm going to jump into it really quick. And I've got to really start with current events because I think it's important for today, especially. Over the weekend, we all became aware of the fact that we had an attempted assassination attempt of a U.S. Supreme Court justice. And this is something that Terry and I, we did everything we could not to directly say that this is what we expected, but we made a very strong hint that this is exactly what we expected. It's being encouraged by the Democrats. I don't care what anybody says. It's being encouraged by people like Chuck Schumer. If you don't believe me, go do some research on it and you'll find it, where he said that you unleashed a whirlwind, you don't know what's going to hit you, that kind of thing. That is treasonous activity, and he should be tried. He should immediately be removed from the Senate and tried as somebody that's trying to promote murder. That is my statement. I'm sticking to it. He can sue me. I'll sue him back. Okay, that's simple. So that's my feeling on it. Also, the kangaroo court that is going to convene tonight, I hope that you guys are not watching that idiotic thing going on in the Senate. I want to remind you what they're talking about. January the 6th, 2021, when there was a protest at the U.S. Capitol. They're making a big deal out of it. Let me tell you, you saw what happened in Washington State. You've seen what's happened across the nations where people are burning buildings down, where there's a lot of death, there's a lot of injury. There were 4 people that died on January the 6th. All 4 of them were Trump supporters. 2 of them died from a heart attack. 1 of them had ADHD and overdosed. And the 4th one was shot in the shoulder by a Capitol police officer and died from complications from existing medical conditions. That's it. That's what all the hoopla is about. 4 people. So, again, that's current events. Terry, I'll let you comment on it real briefly, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. They're being hypocritical to the nth degree. We had riots and, as you've pointed out, murders, rapes, pillaging. In fact, some of it hasn't even stopped across the country, but it's been going on for a year and a half or so, and they have never uttered a word other than to note that they're mostly peaceful.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully nobody watches that ridiculous kangaroo court tonight. I did want to update people on Daniel's presentation. We had him on the show the other night, and I said that we would be running his presentation this week. Unfortunately, ran into some issues, so that has been postponed. I promise you it will be available beginning on Monday the 13th, and that will run every night at 9 o'clock. Now, I also want to mention that on Saturday, I'll be interviewing Mr. Norman Smith. He is a missionary in Japan. I'm going to have him on the Last Christian podcast next Wednesday evening, and I strongly encourage everyone to show up for that one. I think you're going to find it incredibly interesting. If you had to homeschool a kid, well, you're really going to want to hear that too. Now, with all that said, we were speaking last week about the post-tribulation version of the rapture, and both Terry and I agreed that this is this is just really not the best version that's possible, because it's kind of like a reverse bungee jump. after all the trouble's over, God grabs his church, pulls them up to heaven, and throws them right back down on the earth again. Doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's the reason that we put it in the last place on possible versions of the rapture. And I didn't really get any responses from that, which tells me that people agree. So we're moving on now to the mid-trib version of the rapture. This is where 3.5 years into the tribulation period after 3.5 years into the tribulation, then the rapture happens. And Terry, I'm going to let you comment on it. I've got a little bit here, but I'm going to let you go for a minute.
The most important aspect of the teaching of the rapture is completely ignored when you take this position. And there are other areas that can be discussed, but I want to hit this hard and fast and first. If you follow the teachings of the mid-tribulation rapture, you destroy the imminence. And by that I'm saying there are 58 times mentioned in the New Testament where it speaks of the rapture being an imminent event that we are supposed to be daily anticipating. As an example, on the day that's called today. You mean, well, today's called today. That's what I'm talking about. That's how fast it's going to be. And when you follow that, then you've got a calendar. There is no calendar for the rapture.
Right. Well, I had done some, and Terry and I talked about this offline before the show started, but I had done just a touch of research. Terry, you know how my time is around here. As far as the mid-trib goes, now you mentioned that this guy, and you know his name, right? I mean, I don't even...
Dr. John Walvoord, and he was the emeritus chancellor of Dallas Theological Seminary when he was alive for, 4 or 5 decades or something. He was called the prophecy dean, the dean of Bible prophecy during his years as he was teaching and speaking. The guy's absolutely brilliant. He's written a stack of books that are still available after his death. And he's absolutely spot on. He's excellent. He's great. And he'll take you wherever you want to go in teachings of prophecy or Bible teaching in general. But highly recommended. Go ahead, Joel.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I just did a little bit of research into this. He called it, what I'm looking at is I guess, a teaching from it's Lion and the Lamb apologetics. And
that's another prophecy group that he works with or did work with. Okay. And they're excellent. They're excellent too. So.
Okay. Well, he pointed out here that, one of the critical issues is the question whether or not the seventh trumpet, Revelation 11, begins the Great Tribulation. Now, I think we kind of touched on that in a previous show, but basically what he is saying here is that the mid-tribulation view requires the interpretation that the first half of Revelation is not the Great Tribulation. In other words, they're saying that everything that happens during those first 3.5 years doesn't really count. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely, yes. That's the biggest problem. If you start in chapter 6 of Revelation, is when the description of the events of the rapture of the tribulation begin to be laid out in detail, and it's that's when the wrath begins. But there are also verses we've talked about off the air that show us that the day of the Lord begins at the same moment or very shortly after that moment that the rapture takes place, because Paul and Jesus both combine the two prophecies together when they're describing them, that the day of the Lord happens because it's as if a thief in the night has operated, and at the same time we are not going to experience it as thieves because we're anticipating it.
Right. Well, I'm looking through this article as move on here, and
Yeah.
it says at no point do the mid-tribulationists view manifest their interpretation more than in Revelation 11, and it says that they contend that the view of the Great Tribulation is the first part of Daniel's 70th week, and that the rapture occurs in the middle of the week after the tribulation. Now, remember, a week in Bible terms for this discussion means a week equates into a year, correct? So
that each week, yeah, that's right. So
right. So this happens at the 3.5 year mark, and
yes.
Anyway, they contend that the rapture occurs in the middle of the week after the tribulation, and that the last half of the week is the beginning of the day of the Lord, which you just mentioned, and that's the reason that I'm bringing up this. I'm bringing up this paragraph. So, how do you address that? In other words, the day of the Lord occurring right there, halfway through.
Okay. Again, you can go to First Thessalonians chapter 5, and the first, I think it's 5 or 6 verses. There's a bunch of details, but primarily what you want to focus on is it speaks of the day of the Lord coming as a thief. And then immediately after that, Paul begins to reference the fact that Jesus is not coming to us as a thief. So these are two particular events that are happening not simultaneously, but the rapture happens and immediately the tribulation begins. That's the day of the Lord. Now the day of the Lord, and let me throw this in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Understand the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord stretches not just through the tribulation, but it's through all of the cataclysmic events that take place at the end of time. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there for the moment.
Well, no, I really don't want you to leave it there because of the fact that...
Well, all right, then I'll go on to Peter.
Yeah,
all right,
and
Peter.
The reason I'm saying that is because I think that people need to understand that just because the tribulation ends, that doesn't mean everything comes to a halt right now. That we're going to continue to go on. So, yes, please go ahead with the explanation there. I can't give you 13 minutes, but but go ahead.
Okay, sure. He talks about there being false prophets. I had the verse written down here. Anyway, and he talks about the fact that wait a minute, maybe it's over here. Hang on one second. This is terrible. I'm sorry. Hang on one second.
That's fine, Terry. We had not discussed this pre-show, so Terry's not prepared to access Scripture right away. So that's fine, Terry. You don't really have to dig out the Scripture right now. Go ahead.
Sure. All right, then just let me, Peter talks about it when he talks about the day of the Lord beginning, and then he talks about the world ending in fire and all of that. And what he's saying there, he's putting two events that are not back to back. He's talking about the day of the Lord, as we've just seen in Thessalonians, the day of the Lord beginning immediately following the rapture, and I'm talking seconds. I'm not talking a week later or whatever, because it's going to be in a moment in the twinkling eye of the rapture happens, and that is when the day of the Lord is going to begin. And he talks about that, but in the same verse, and I apologize, I can't find it. I've got so many of them on my screen here. But he says the day of the Lord begins, and then he talks about the destruction of the world in fire and flame, et cetera, which doesn't happen until the very end, which is a whole different area of study.
Okay, I'm even a little confused at this point. So
go ahead. What do you got?
So I want to try to clear this up, because I know I mentioned this to Terry before the show started. He's done 40 years of research on this stuff. Okay, so he sees everything. He sees all the context. He's able to look, he's thinking about a million scriptures at one time. Everything fits together. One leads to another, and another one leads to another. And then there are people like me who have not done those 40 years of research and aren't as up to speed on it. And so my confusion, Terry, the day of the Lord, it's been mentioned now a couple of times, and it's been mentioned a couple of different ways.
That's right.
Okay, the mid-tribbers are saying that the rapture occurs halfway through the tribulation period, and that coincides with the day of the Lord. And you were saying, yes, the rapture, when it occurs, that also coincides with, if I understood you right, that also coincides with the day of the Lord, but it doesn't clear up when does that day of the Lord start? Pre-trib, mid-trib, after-trib.
Okay, the day of the Lord. Okay, we're going to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. But of the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need I write to you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. Now remember, Jesus is talking about he's coming as a thief in the night to those who are not prepared. Paul goes on in this passage and he says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with a child, they shall not escape. Verse 4, but ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day, the day of the Lord, should overtake you as a thief. So he is showing that the day of the thief that Jesus is warning people about is also the same day that they are raptured. And the rapture, by the way, precedes, even if it's only by seconds, but it precedes the day of the Lord beginning. Okay.
All right.
And
so
that's
let me just address this real quick. Now, when we're talking about the day of the Lord, is that the same thing as the tribulation?
It includes the tribulation.
Okay.
It's not just the tribulation. It's just events that take place because the day of the Lord is in control. That's why it's called the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is controlled in that period that stretches out beyond the tribulation. Okay.
And
because let me give you here. First Peter, I found it.
Okay.
1 Peter 3:10. If I can see, I had it and I brought up that one verses. Hang on just a second.
Well, while you're looking for that, I just want to I want to clear this completely up here because when somebody says day of, it's like the day of the Super Bowl. Okay, we know that is one day, one event, one time, all that. Okay, but when we're speaking about day of the Lord, we're not talking about one day, one time, 1 3-hour period and then we're done or whatever. The day of the Lord is an ongoing event. It's not like it's just one day.
Exactly. Okay. It's not a 24-hour period. Okay. It's a period of time. Now here's where Peter in 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 10, here's where Peter gives an overview of the entire thing. And he says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. Remember where we heard about it in 1 Thessalonians? The coming as a thief in the night. It's the same event. But he tacks on to that in the which, and that's why I'm saying it's not just one event. It's just not the tribulation. It says in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up.
Oh, wow.
This is total catastrophe here.
Yeah.
So he's giving an overview, and at his point in time where he is, everybody kind of knows everything that's going on and what the prophecies are. And so he's giving a beginning and ending of the whole thing and so forth. But people come along, they read this verse and they say, well, my goodness, the day of the Lord's coming and when it comes, the whole world's going to blow up. That's not what it's saying. Yeah. So, again, you have to get into the study, but
it's an ongoing event.
It's an ongoing, sure.
Now, from my understanding, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't had the time to really dig into the topic the way I would
absolutely.
really like. But it's my understanding that this mid-trib suggestion
Position.
or theory or whatever is rather recent. It's not something that's been taught throughout history, but it's kind of a recent thing, maybe in the last 100 years or so. Is that right?
Well, probably the last several hundred years.
Okay.
The reason I say that is studies have been done. They did for a while. They were trying to say Darby was the one who actually came up with the idea of the rapture, and so Dr. Watson, believe it or not, his name is William Watson. He came out with a book with a study of the dispensationalism before Darby is the name of the book, and he came out with a study of the 2 centuries before Darby, and showing people still studying the same subject before Darby ever even dirtied his first diaper. So this is, but again, in terms of time, that's relatively new, and so that in that period of time, I remember reading passages of different preachers where they were trying to put it together, and this is back in the 1300s, 1400s, and so forth, and they're trying to put it together like what's going to happen, because things were bad then. They were not nearly as bad as they are now, but they were bad, and they were thinking, okay, and some of them were picking up on the teaching of the imminence, and so they were like, okay, we're supposed to be anticipating it, and the Pope is the Antichrist, and so forth and so on, which is nothing new. Seems like every Pope that comes along is the Antichrist. But anyway, the point being that the teaching is relatively new in terms of the centuries and the millennia. It is perhaps several hundred years old, but.
Okay. Well, we're going to continue talking about it. We're not done with mid-trib yet, and Terry's got a tremendous amount of information on that, and we'll get more into it again on Saturday. But before we get out of here today, Terry, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your segment on the show, The Eye of the Storm, and also about your book, Blessed Offer Peermore, in its 5th edition. And I don't know if you've even started work on your radio show yet, but anyway, it's your time. Go ahead.
Actually, it's from The Eye of the Storm, Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And what I'm doing is I'm helping us to walk out of the storm and back into the center of the eye of the storm, because that's where the peace and the control and the power is, in the eye of the storm. And that's where the quiet is. And that quiet is only from God. And that's where we get it. And so that's each week we're going through various teachings and scriptures and so forth, stopping for a moment and catching our breath, because God is, after all, in control. And these things that are so exciting to us, God has been, as he says, he's been telling the ending from the beginning. This is in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, even in the Torah. God was saying, here's the ending. This is what it's going to be. Right. And people now, when they go back in those books and read, they say, my goodness, that was prophesied. That was told. God said that was going to happen. Right. So that's what I'm doing in the Eye of the Storm.
Okay. Now that is every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. that's on revelationradio.net. Now, I do want to remind people to please tune in to the Last Christian podcast, and that is every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. You can find that at www.lastchristian.net. And I've got a lot of great guests coming on there from Japan, from Canada, from all over the United States. We're just going to we've got a loaded schedule coming up, and I know that you guys will find it very, very interesting. As a matter of fact, I've got Norman Smith Run with Horses talk about that podcast on this coming up Wednesday night at 7:30. But, I do want to remind everybody once again, the purpose of this show is to locate, or look for anyway, that last person to accept Jesus Christ as Savior before the rapture. We think it's important, and we also can kind of verify that, because here's the deal. Just like there is a last play in any football game, when you throw that last pass, it's either win or lose. Right now, the game's over. Well, it's the same thing with the rapture. When the rapture occurs, the game is over. And anyone that has accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, living and dead, is going to immediately meet him in the air. So there's going to be that last person to accept Jesus Christ. And when they say, in Jesus' name, in the blink of an eye, in the twinkle of an eye, they're going to see him. And they're going to see all of us that know Jesus. So if you have not yet given your heart to Jesus, please do so. Just tell the Lord that you know you're a sinner. You know that Jesus died for you. You know he rose after 3 days. You know that he is now with the Father in heaven, and that he has promised to come back. And if you'll do that, if you'll pray that simple prayer, you'll find that peace that exceeds all understanding. Now then, until Saturday night, everyone, we hope that you'll join us again at 7:30. May God bless you, and good night.
Thanks again for joining us today for the Last Christian Radio Show. And be sure to tune in every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7:30 to 8 p.m. Central Time right here on Revelation Radio. And don't forget to join us every Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Central for the Last Christian Podcast, now available on all major podcast platforms and at www.lastchristian.net. Until the trumpet sounds.